All right, so this morning, yes, once again, Pastor's talking from what is affectionately called the Gospel of John, and you all know how I feel about that. However, what I've discovered in the last couple of weeks is there's some things that have come out of that gospel that are really good. It irritates some of my more conservative friends when I talk about the Gospel of John and say, even a broken clock is right twice a day. So the gospel has got some things in it that are correct. Now, what I am about to read you, though, this morning, make sure that you set this in your mind right, because it's really important. This is part of the Last Supper conversation, okay? John, this is when they're in the upper room. Normally we think about the Last Supper, we think about communion, right? Okay, but it's out of the book of the Gospel of John, where we learn that really communion is more about service rather than the creeds and the credo. Okay, and Jesus continues this conversation by telling folks, because he knows what's coming, and so he says this: don't let this throw you. You trust God, don't you? Trust me. There is plenty of room for you in my Creator's home. If it weren't so, would I have told you that I am on my way to get a room ready for you? And if I'm on my way to get a room ready, I'll come back and get you so you can live where I live. And you already know the road that I'm taking. Now, Thomas says, Master, we have no idea where you're going. I mean, that sounds pretty logical, right? We have no idea where you're going. We don't know how you're going to get there. We don't even know what you're talking about. So how do you expect us to know the road? And Jesus said, I am the road, also the truth, also the life. No one gets to the Creator apart from me. If you really knew me, you would know my Creator as well. From now on, you do know the Creator. You have even seen the Creator. Now, how many, I'm going to stop there for a second just so we can get started with this. What did I just read to you? What does that say? Okay.
Well, up until that point, there was no way back. Once you sinned, that was it. He was saying at that point that there is a way back.
Okay.
It's through me.
Okay. Anybody else want to take a shot at this?
You know the road.
Huh?
You know the road.
Know the road?
Follow me.
You don't want to take a shot at this? Why not? Chicken? Well, because I'm kind of sort of setting you up, right? Because most people take this, and this is where go ahead.
I was saying that I saw a post I like that says religion is following the messenger and spirituality is following the message.
Okay.
And so I guess what he was saying is there's no connection or union with God except through His example.
Okay, see, you're starting to cross the street, which is good.
Okay.
Because the way this normally gets preached, thousands of people, folks, thousands of people have been burned at the stake, died, thrown out of their communities, etc., because they didn't buy into the theology that Jesus is the only way to God. And that's the way this gets preached. Now remember, I told you that it's very important to understand the setting. What is the setting? They're sitting around a supper table. They have just spent 3 years with Jesus. They know that they're in trouble, amen? And they're worried. And Jesus sits there and says, look, you don't have to worry. Don't you know that I'm going to go prepare a place for you? And by the way, if you trust me, I'm coming back. And I'll get you. You know the way that I'm going. Now, I want to stop there for a minute, folks, Anybody who's got a half a brain in their head that had been following Jesus and reading the tea leaves would have kind of figured the road they were on. Amen?
Isn't that what I said?
The road was called, you're going to get your butt arrested. And unless you're damn lucky, they're going to kill you. Amen? Because they'd already been fighting with the Pharisees, right? There were crowds that had been incited against them. And the Romans were kind of looking at them with a half-cocked eye about this kingship thing and this Messiah thing. So when he says this to his disciples, you know the road that we're on.
Lies.
Let's get on that road so that we understand what this conversation is.
Amen.
Rather than this high and mighty stuff that if you don't fall down on your knees and roll around and swear your allegiance. Because, by the way, I will also remind folks, especially those, because I understand we're on Facebook Live today, those who are about to tune out, that there was a point where Jesus was going from one town to the next, doing his thing, and his disciples ran across a bunch of people that were doing the exact same things that Jesus was doing. They were casting out demons. They were taking care of the widows. They were caring for the orphans. In fact, apparently they were doing some miracles. The problem was the disciples noticed they weren't doing it in Jesus' name. And the disciples come over to Jesus and said, hey, these people are doing this, they're doing that. Do you want us to stop them? Because obviously they're not part of us. And Jesus' response was, if they are not against us, they're for us. So I could stand here and tell you that a couple of thousand years of theology that say Jesus is telling the whole world that he's the only way to God is bunk. For the disciples, yes. Do you understand that? You know the road. Jesus was telling them, stay steady, stay here. I am the way that you're going to get through this. Understand exactly what I'm doing. And when Thomas, sister, says, I have no idea, then Jesus comes up with, and by the way, we don't even know, according to some theologians, whether John is quoting Jesus directly or if he's just adding dialogue. But when Thomas says, we have no idea, what does Jesus respond? He says, look, if you've seen me, you've seen God. Well, okay. I think that's pretty important, don't you? There was a line in Star Trek years ago when they had these aliens, right, that appeared and they were able to control things with their mind, you know, and so forth and so on. Well, it turned out at the end of that, they were these little small, ugly-looking bluebirds. They were actually shapeshifters, too. And, you know, Captain Kirk Shatner in those days was like, why didn't you tell us who you really were? You know, and then they had that fake kind of way. They came back up into human form. And the one alien leaned into Shatner's character of Kirk and said, we appeared to you humans as you would understand us. Understand that God gave us Jesus Christ so we would understand God. Amen? Amen. Now, understand my gripe with John being a gospel is because I've always told you that it's a literary apology for the divinity of Christ. So John, in telling this story, hasn't changed anything. The Father's in me and I'm in the Father, and if you've seen me, you've seen the Father, you've seen God. But you know what? Again, on that idea that a clock is right twice a day, even if it's broken, what did Jesus tell us was the way to God? Come on, you know.
True love,
Love, unconditional love, forgiveness,
mercy.
being merciful,
Just.
doing justice, walking humbly with God, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked. So when he says, I am the way, there you go, folks. It's pretty simple. You want to know how to get through life? Now, I did find a story just for you guys that it's been around for a while, and I know that I've told this story before, and I've misquoted it, so I wanted to make sure I quoted it right. All right? Apparently, there's a man who died. He's ushered into heaven, which it appears to be this enormous house, and one of the angels begins to escort him around a hallway, and they're going past all these rooms, right? "What's in that room?" the guy asked, pointing to a very somber-looking group of people chanting a Gregorian Mass. And the angel said, "Oh, that's the Roman Catholic room. It's very high church." "Well, what's in that room?" pointing to a group of half-naked dancers gyrating their hips and occasionally shrieking out loud. "Oh, that's the Balinese group," said the angel. "They're very lively." "Well, what's in that room?" pointing to a group of bald-headed people meditating to the sound of an enormous gong. "Oh, that's the Zen group. Very quiet. You would hardly know that they're here." And then the angel stopped the man as they were about to round a corner, and he says, "Now, when we get to the next room, I would appreciate it if you would tiptoe past, that you would not make a sound." And the man said, "Well, why is that?" And the angel said, "That's because that room there has a bunch of fundamentalist Christians in it, and they think they're the only ones here."
Oh,
Let's not get hung up
thank you.
on that piece where Jesus says, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life," as if that is some piece of great theology. It was actually compassion for his disciples who were about to watch him get arrested, taken away, put through a mockery of a trial, and killed. He had to have them prepared for the day that he come up out of the tomb. Folks, we are way past that. We know that Jesus is our Messiah and that he is our way because he teaches what every other major religion in the world teaches. And that is to be fair, to be forgiving, and be humble in your faith. God bless you this morning.